Recently, I heard rumors that there's going to be a remake of Sonic Heroes, which almost knocked me out of my chair because, well, Sonic Heroes is bad. Yes, you heard it here first, folks. But keeping the idea of a remake in mind, I'm not going to cover everything in the game. If you want a full review of Sonic Heroes, make sure to subscribe. We just hit 100 subs, so we're only like 8 zeros away from my sub goal of 1 trillion subscribers. I mean, we're almost there. There are 4 teams in this game, each with the same levels, but different stories. Sonic Heroes attempts to tell a simple story for simple guys like me, but it just somehow lands on its face. I understand at the end of the day, the plot was always going to have to be get Eggman. But man, there's just hardly any effort here. One of the biggest issues the game has is in the design of the teams. Every team does the exact same levels in the same order. How exactly are you supposed to make a unique story for 4 different teams who are going through the exact same levels and bosses in the same order? That wasn't a rhetorical question. How do you do that? Please leave a comment under the video if you know, because I have no idea. And apparently, Sonic Team didn't either, because what we end up with is shoestring motivations and hardly anything matters. Team Sonic just get a note from Eggman. I do like how Eggman addresses the letter, "Dear Sonic Heroes," and then immediately writes, "Guess what, Sonic Heroes?" Like he could have just skipped the dear part, but he just wanted to make the letter more formal. I mean, he's a good guy. Knuckles is just chilling. Master Emerald? Never heard of it. Also, it really bothers me that Knuckles and Tails just jump out of this plane. They don't even park it. They just crash it into a rock. Like, what the fuck? You could have just taken the plane. For Team Rose, Froggy and Chocola, the African-American Chow, are kidnapped by apparently Sonic, so they're all chasing after him. And Team Chaotix is just here for the money. There isn't anything interesting here. All you get is very simple motivations, which all boil down to get Eggman. And Team Dark is just the worst. It doesn't even make sense. If you don't know, the real villain of this game is actually Metal Sonic. He's just pretending to be Eggman. And Metal Sonic wants to copy the data of Chaos, Sonic, and Shadow. But I don't understand his plan in the Team Dark story at all. The only reason Team Dark is after Eggman is because Rouge somehow found Shadow while looking for treasure in Eggman's base and woke him up. They just kind of formed a team because Rouge wants to look for more treasure. They also found E123 Omega, who's with them because he's mad at Eggman for locking him in this room. Jesus Christ, Eggman, can you not program one robot that doesn't betray you? But what was Metal Sonic's plan here in the first place for copying Shadow's data? Did he tell Rouge that there was treasure here so she would find Shadow and they would both go together to go after Eggman? If that was the case, good on him. He's got the precognitive powers of John. You know, John Saw, my favorite Esper. He could have just copied his data while he was asleep, but whatever. Also, what's up with this weird Shadow robot clone plotline? Like, why is this here? It's so bad. It's only introduced like halfway through the game and it goes nowhere. I don't even understand if he's supposed to be a robot or a clone. Like, Rouge says he's supposed to be a robot, but Omega talks about cloning. And these are clearly some sort of cloning pod, but this is obviously a robot, so I've got no clue what they were going for here. Maybe Omega is talking about cloning because he's a robot, so making identical robots is cloning to him, which I think is actually incredibly clever, but I am giving the game too much credit. I'm reading way too far into this, I think. I hate to say that this plotline is half-baked, because that's giving it way too much credit. This plotline is baked as much as a cake that you took all the ingredients out for and just kind of left them on the counter. There's clearly an idea for a story here, but it never even gets to the stage where it forms anything cohesive. Why is it so bad? The story is just a huge step down from the previous Sonic game, Sonic Adventure 2, which offered an actual cohesive story, which, you know, made sense and was pretty good. There's no way Sega would ever redo the story for a remake. But Sonic games have never been ruined by just the story. So how's the gameplay? Gotta go fast. Gotta go fast. The gameplay is extremely poorly thought out. You can rotate between the characters in an extremely clunky way to switch between the speed, power, or flight character of your team. The mechanic just does not flow well together. For one, the game is designed in a way that doesn't allow for a lot of creativity in how you can handle a situation. These goddamn signs are everywhere in the game, and you think they would just be here as part of the first zone or the tutorial, but they are literally in the entire game. Whether you're doing Team Rose level 1 or super hard mode, they're still here. And they really are what the game is designed around. Sure, you can ignore them and play the levels how you want to an extent, but clearly this is how the devs intend you to play, so they got me switching like Pavlov's dogs. Sonic Heroes revolves around a square peg, square hole design, where the majority of sections are designed to be solved by one singular feature. Pole speeds tornado move. Big fan powers triangle dive. You need to get up high, lights, well, flight. All of these obstacles tend to feel extremely inorganic in the general design of the levels, and feel like they're only there to try and justify the mechanics rather than naturally stem from the design of the game. The biggest blunder of the switching mechanic is how you can't switch while in the air. All of the mechanics I just listed take place in the air, so as a game designer, if you wanted to string along sections that would require precise switching and platforming between the different characters, you can't. You can't have a section where you homing attack as Sonic, switch to Tails to fly, then switch to Knuckles for a glide. Not without punctuating each one of these sections with some platform to stand on, which really kills any momentum or flow, because then our theoretical section we designed now becomes homing attack, pause, switch, fly, pause, switch, glide, pause, switch. It's boring and takes away from any potential tension or creativity in the level design because you are constantly getting breaks and sectioning the gameplay apart into smaller sections. Let's be honest, these are all simple mechanics. Flight and glide are both extremely limited, so the only way I could see possibility of adding complexity is by adding sections where you need to use 2 or more characters in sequence. But you can't design a platforming section that requires flight and glide. Only sections that need flight, then glide. And besides that, not being able to switch on the fly is really fucking shitty when you need it. You can't save yourself from a bad jump by switching to fly. You can't fly on the fly, you could say. If you need to use the glide on these fans, but you haven't actually switched to power, you just have to slowly and awkwardly just get yourself off to the side and switch to power and then go back on. All the mechanics just end up feeling extremely disjointed. I wish there was at least some explanation why these characters need to work together besides, this is how we made the game. Like, Metal Sonic stole the Sonic Heroes data and it weakened them in the process. I mean, that's an easy enough explanation. Without an explanation, it's just really weird. Like, what was the conversation here? Hey, Sonic and Tails, I need you to roll into a ball so I can use you to punch things. You knucklehead! There's also a lot of overlap between what the characters can do. What you really have here is not speed, power, and flight. It's fast, slow, and slow as ass. Generally, what you do is stay on speed, and switch as little as possible, but it doesn't always work out like that, because of the moronic level up system. What the fuck is this, an RPG now? Why is this in a Sonic game? Basically, sometimes when you kill an enemy, you get an orb of power for a character, but only for one of the characters you aren't playing as, which is stupid as hell. Like, isn't Knuckles designed to be the de facto enemy killer? Tails can't even kill enemies without a power-up. So what this usually means is that you use Knuckles to kill an enemy, but because Knuckles killed all the enemies, he ends up weaker than the other two. Now granted, it's not as if Sonic and Tails can't fight enemies. In fact, at full power, Tails might even be better at fighting some enemies than Knuckles is. But for some enemies, like the big ones, only Knuckles can really do anything to them. So you have to focus on powering him up. Now, checkpoints will guarantee you get a power-up for your current character, which is good. But what's fucking bullshit is that if you die, you don't get all the power-ups back. You know what the consequence for dying used to be? Losing time and progress. Now it's time, progress, and practically guaranteeing that the rest of the level is going to be a miserable slog of an experience. Might as well just restart, especially in some of the later levels if you die near the end. So you better hope nobody has greased those fucking rails today. What this all really results in is a frustrating reliance on RNG and a lack of any real role definition. While I did just get through complaining before about how the platforming design was square peg, square hole, I think they should at least commit to the bit if that's what they were going for here. If you want Knuckles to be the muscle, then fine, design the game that way. Don't make me have to rely on RNG to make sure that he's the enemy killer he's supposed to be. Because the characters are too homogenized, the only real reason to switch is to deal with these select few obstacles the game forces you to deal with. The switching mechanic falls in an awkward zone where it feels both forced and underutilized. If you removed fans and flight sections, you could pretty much play the whole game without ever having to switch. In fact, just map one switch button to flight and the other to punch, and just remove switching entirely. Then the game would work way more smoothly. I've heard people say that this game takes the formula of Sonic's 2 and 3 and transitions it into 3D, with the 2-act and a boss structure. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The classic games are all built around two concepts: multiple paths and building momentum. Sonic Heroes fails even just on the first requirement because it doesn't even have multiple paths. And as for the momentum, it fails that too, because the game doesn't really have or require any. Because of the stop and start nature of the switching, the game couldn't really be designed around any momentum physics. In fact, you pretty much get up to top speed as soon as you move the stick all the way forward, and any part that would seem like it requires momentum is automated. As for the lack of multiple paths, that is probably one of the things that hurt this game the most. The reason the classic games have those is because you have to replay them if you get a game over, or if you wanted to collect all the Chaos Emeralds after missing them the first time. The different paths offer unique experiences each playthrough. You can see which one is easier, or even make your own path by switching between them. In Sonic Heroes, to see the true ending, you have to play the same 14 levels a minimum of 4 times. So we really could have used multiple paths to make multiple playthroughs more interesting. Another thing that doesn't help is the teams play the exact same way. There's very minor differences, but nothing that results in a different platforming experience, which is where the majority of the time is spent in the game. Even if there aren't multiple paths, just changing the way that 2 teams have to deal with an obstacle goes a long way. Team Chaotix is the most unique, and a step in the right direction. But just because SBO can turn invisible doesn't suddenly make it feel like a new game. It just makes for some funny boss fights though. Look at them. They don't even know where I am. I hate the design of the special stages too. You need a key to get access to the special stage, but you can't get hit or die, or else you lose it. I mean, that's just awesome. Just exactly how I like to play Sonic games. Slow and methodically. These special stages suck ass anyway. They're kind of like the Sonic 2 half pipes, but just fucking crap. I constantly lose speed for no reason or bump into nothing, and my characters start running backwards. What did I hit? There's nothing there! I will not be going into depth rating each zone here, but the common theme is that most of these levels are fine. That's it, they're just fine. Most of them aren't that bad, except for Casino Park and Rail Canyon, which are goddamn abysmal. If the game is going to require you to play the same levels 4 different times, they better be fucking good, and these just aren't. The levels are too long and have too many boring, tedious sections that just waste your time. Like the fucking bobsled sections, pinball, these big guns, and just waiting for the frogs to spawn plants. All these levels take almost 10 minutes, which is just way too long. They overstay their welcome once, and then they overstay it 3 more times. Sonic Heroes has more flaws than this, but I'm gonna refrain from going further. My intent here is to show all the fundamental flaws with the game that I don't think can be changed, without making it a completely different game. The story is terrible, but they won't change it. The switching mechanic is poorly thought out and clunky, and the levels themselves range from middling to bad, and designed poorly on a fundamental level. You want to know how you could fix Sonic Heroes? Create 42 new levels and remove the swapping mechanic, and throw in a new story while you're at it. But they won't do that, so I just don't see the point in a remake. A remake can be a great chance to fix a bad game, but because the game is so fundamentally flawed, I just don't really see what they can do. And speaking of flaws, did I mention the final zone is the Egg Fleet? You know what probably would have helped Team Sonic here? The fucking plane! The goddamn plane! Why'd they crash into a rock?
Just what do you think you're doing here?
Who's this broad?